The 18th century is also just the years of the 1700s. So the 1700s, that's the 18th century. That's how it is. Even though it's 1700s, it's the 18th century. It's confusing, but that's how historians label it. It also makes sense if you think about it. So, revolutions. No, let's start here. During the 18th century, elements of Enlightenment thinking culminated in Atlantic revolutions. Okay, so let's just keep reading this paragraph. Revolutions began to challenge the legitimacy of monarchical and aristocratic power structures. The Industrial Revolution began during mid-century, leading to radical changes in human society and the environment. The European colonization of the Americas, and other parts of the world intensified, and associated mass migration of peoples grew in size as a part of the Age of Sail. During the century, slave trading expanded across the shores of the Atlantic, while declining in Russia and China. Okay, so a lot to unpack in that first paragraph. We have, during the 18th century, elements of the Enlightenment thinking. Let's open that in a new reading list. So the Enlightenment, or the Age of Enlightenment, was an intellectual and philosophical movement that occurred in Europe in the 17th and 18th century, so the 1600s and the 1700s. There's this term also, Atlantic revolutions. Atlantic revolutions that were a culmination of the Enlightenment were numerous revolutions in the Atlantic world in the late 18th and early 19th. So that's the 1700s and the 1800s, following the Age of Enlightenment. Atlantic world, I'm assuming, is Europe. I'm assuming it's anything that's around the Atlantic Ocean. So that would be, I guess, the eastern coast of the United States, and then like Western Europe, I think. What else we got here? European colonization of the Americas and the Industrial Revolution. So let's click into that as well. So that is, of course, the Industrial Revolution is divided into the first and second, a period of global transition of the human economy towards more widespread, efficient, and stable manufacturing processes. Okay. And of course, we also have this Age of Sail, which means the Age of Sail is a period in European history that lasted at the latest from the mid-16th, so that'd be the kind of 1550, all the way to 1850, in which the dominance of sailing ships in global trade and warfare culminated, particularly marked by the introduction of naval artillery, and ultimately reached its extent at the advent of, and the rest of the paragraph is hidden for me. I digress. Western historians have occasionally defined the 18th century otherwise for the purposes of their work. For example, the short 18th century may be defined as 1715 to 1789, denoting the period of time between the death of Louis XIV of France and the start of the French Revolution, with an emphasis on directly interconnected events. Okay, so the French Revolution, a huge topic in history. Louis XIV. So there's a way of defining it as the short. To historians who expand the century to include larger historical movements, the long 18th century may run from the Glorious Revolution of 1688, so that's at the end of the 17th, all the way to the Battle of Waterloo, which is the beginning of the 19th century. Interesting. Okay, Glorious Revolution, also known as the Revolution of 1688, the deposition of James II, and the Seventh in November of 1688, and replaced by his daughter Mary II and her husband William III of Orange. And the Battle of Waterloo was fought on Sunday the 18th near Waterloo, marking the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon was defeated. All right, I'm going to open reading lists for both of these. Okay, so in Europe, philosophers ushered in the Age of Enlightenment. This period coincided with the French Revolution in 1789 and was later compromised by the excesses of the Reign of Terror. I feel like I've clicked into this before. The Reign of Terror was a period of following the creation of the Republic. So a period of the French Revolution following the creation of the First Republic. Sounds terrible. At first, many monarchies of Europe embraced Enlightenment ideals, but in the wake of the French Revolution, they feared loss of power and formed broad coalitions to oppose the French Republic in the French Revolutionary Wars. The monarchies of Europe embraced Enlightenment. So at first they did, but in the wake of the revolution, they feared their loss of power and formed broad coalitions to oppose the French Republic. Fascinating. Okay, so the French Revolutionary Wars are fought, it seems. The French Revolutionary Wars were a series of sweeping military conflicts resulting from the French Revolution. They pitted France against Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and several others. Okay. I am curious how this is different from the Napoleonic Wars and how connected they are. Okay. Various conflicts throughout the century, including the War of Spanish Succession and the 7 Years' War, saw Great Britain triumph over its rivals to become the preeminent power in Europe. However, Britain's attempt to exert authority over the 13 colonies became a catalyst for the American Revolution. The 18th century also marked the end of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth as an independent state. Its semi-democratic government system was not robust enough to prevent partition by the neighboring states of Austria, Prussia, and Russia. Prussia is a country that doesn't exist nowadays, but it is it was in those days. Okay, in West Asia, Nader Shah led Persia in successful military campaigns. The Ottoman Empire experienced a period of peace, taking no part in European wars from 1740 to 1768. As a result, the empire was not exposed to Europe's military improvements during the 7 Years' War. The Ottoman military consequently lagged behind and suffered several defeats against Russia in the second half of the century. In South Asia, the death of Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb was followed by the expansion of the Maratha Confederacy and increased level of European influence and control in the region. In 1739, Persian Emperor Nader Shah invaded and plundered Delhi, the capital of the Mughal Empire. Later, his general Ahmed Shah Durrani scored another victory against the Marathas and then dominant power in India. In the Third Battle of Panipat, by the middle of the century, the British East India Company began to conquer eastern India. By the end of the century, the Anglo-Mysore Wars against Tipu Sultan and his father Hyder Ali led to company rule over the south. We are kind of running out of time. I'm going to cut it short here, but we can see a lot of, this is already a very long intro because it's more recent. This is like the early modern, era. And there's just a lot more history, a lot more things written down and preserved, and we know it more accurately. So vis-a-vis, there's a lot to talk about. Of course, we can also talk a lot about antiquity, just things are, more concrete and there's more free sources here. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys on the next one.